having the diagnosis has been so affirming for me and validating. Getting my diagnosis, it made me analyze and make decisions that I don't think I ever could have made without. As a kid, being the weird kid, being the one that was constantly labelled. I'm talking by teachers, by other kids, by other people's parents. I was constantly the one people compared their child to. I got put into an accelerated learning program, but then I got kicked out of it.
What are some of the signs of neurodivergence in children?
We have this stereotypical idea that you are the loud, over-the-top, disruptive type. And of course, with ADHD, you can have two types. Quite often teachers say to me, like, she's doing really well academically, but, she's away with the fairies. Like, everyone jokes she's in Teddyland.
But are there some things that you have said to your kids that perhaps you can see that is going to help them to do that and make those connections?
You can't change how someone thinks, feels, or treats you. What you can do is change how you react and respond to that. So trying to instill that in my kids, in the confidence in who they are, is enough, that they are enough, they are more than enough, and they will always be enough to the right people. Anyone else, that's not your problem.
You said just now your recent diagnosis of ADHD. Has it changed anything by having the label ADHD?
Oh my God, yes, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Liv, thank you for joining me today. I say this about everybody that I'm very excited, but I'm genuinely pumped for our conversation today.
Yay, me too.
Awesome. For someone listening that hasn't come across you and your hilariousness and all the generosity and the things that you share, who's Liv White in like a 1-minute summary?
Oh, not the elevator pitch. You'd think after like a decade that I would work this out, but I still kind of don't know.
Right.
I think that's probably part of it is like, I guess I am me.
Yes.
And I've, been sharing online for nearly a decade now, since I became a mum really. It's just kind of been the evolution and journey. And I couldn't even really tell.
Right. Well, I think people follow you online because you're very vulnerable, you share a lot. And it's very relatable.
Yeah,
and I think
not by choice. It kind of just happens.
Well, I think that's what makes it funny, and that's what makes it like something that people can relate to. How important is your community for you? How important is the audience?
At so many different points in time, I have thought about this because obviously my content has changed a lot. As I have evolved, as my life has changed, my kids have grown, and at every given point, I can always sort of look and see, because I'm always super conscious about what I'm providing for my audience and what I'm providing for my community. And at the same time, it's amazing how much that also gives back to me as well, because whatever it might be, early stages of motherhood, or now I've got preteen girls, or I could be talking about me myself as a woman and my hormones and my emotions, my ADHD diagnosis, all of these things. And then there's people on the other end who are like, oh my God, me too, or oh my God, I thought it was just me, or I thought I was alone. It's just a constant thing, because no matter what it is, when you build up the courage to sort of share something, you realize it's not just you. And it's been so important to me, and such a big part of my own journey. And I think, even today, thinking about it and some of the things I've shared, just even in the last couple of days, getting those messages back from people being oh my God, babe, I feel you. Oh my God, yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. Even just little things like that from essentially strangers can be so huge.
You don't actually realize until you don't have that coming back. So at the moment on my Instagram, I have an autoresponder, and it's a punish, and it's an autoresponder with a purpose. It won't stay there for very long, but it's asking people to do something.
Yeah.
And what it does is it means I don't see the questions coming in at the moment, or people giving me feedback, and I'm like, where have the people gone? And you don't realise how much you lean into your community.
Yeah,
it's really crazy.
Where you're am I not giving value?
Yeah, I'm have I got nothing to say here?
Yeah.
And then I realised that's what was happening. Yeah, I'm where did everybody go? Did the lights get turned out?
Absolutely. Because you do sort of gauge also from that feedback, I think.
Yeah.
You know, like, and then you sort of reflect on yourself.
You feed on it I think in a good way.
Yeah.
But I think also if you're listening to what your audience is saying to you, you never run out of something to say. It's a
100%.
conversation.
Yeah.
An ongoing conversation with your people.
Yeah, and you want it to be two ways. Otherwise, like, it does kind of just feel like you're speaking into the void.
Do you feel like that it's gotten kinder in the more sort of recent years? I've been thinking about this, and I feel like whether people just unfollow because they're like, you're not my person, and power to you because I'm not your person. So that's a good decision that you've made rather than just sitting there and bitching.
Absolutely.
But do you feel like it's changed at all, or is it still as trolly as ever?
I think, like, and look, like everything, I could totally go down a rabbit hole with this because I have so many thoughts. So I have to just
rein it in.
Rein it in. What are the ones that are important here, Liv? What point do we want to make? I think because obviously we are the generation that have grown up without social media into like what it is now, where it is like so intense, right? Yes. And I think that there are still a lot of people where it's like this thing was thrown at us and we had to learn how to use it and learn how to use it correctly. You know, anything in life can be seen as a good or bad. Like a car is great, it gets you from A to B, but the wrong person behind the wheel, it's a weapon. And I think social media is the same thing. And at any given point in time, like I've experienced, you know, trolling, negativity. But what I've sort of really learned from that is that, like, even though I can't control people doing it and saying it, I do have some level of control of how much I say seek that out, because it's not necessarily always like directly in front of you, but unfortunately it's like, you know, pressing a bruise. Sometimes if you know it's there or someone tells you about it or you can go and find it, you will. And I think it's just a matter of like learning what your triggers are and what your boundaries are, and just sort of staying inside of that. And look, sometimes things get you off guard. And I think it also depends on how you are feeling at any moment in time. Because something that someone says to me today could absolutely destroy me and stick with me for years. The same thing could be said to me tomorrow and I like wouldn't even blink.
Right.
So I've not really answered your question. I do think people are getting better at recognizing like what their own triggers are, and perhaps like maybe a little while ago they might have told you what they thought in not the nicest way, and now they just cut you off and block you.
Well, well, there's that as well. I do feel like people in mine have calmed down, but maybe that's just me not tolerating stuff either. I don't know. My favourite is the one that when you get the message, it's not actually for you. It was supposed to be for someone else, and they're going off about
I love those ones. I actually love those ones because like it. I do have not that I have sympathy for people, but I do get that sometimes we have conversations with our peers, right? And it's not intended for the outside world. So at least those ones where it actually, they didn't intend to send it to you, but they're obviously not saying the nicest thing, at least were meant to be keeping that between themselves. Because we would be in complete and utter denial ourselves if we did not admit that, like, sometimes you do have those conversations with people, like, and, you know, someone might be like, oh, you're such a bitch. Like, no, I don't. But it's true. Like, sometimes I'll turn around to one of my best friends and be like, oh, my God, I can't. But it's like it was never intended to upset the person. However, it is hilarious, and I do quite enjoy responding to them and then watching them, like, try and scamper to try and explain it.
I know. I think they're hilarious as well. I always want to try and have, like, some type of banter about it. It's like, don't feel bad. It's kind of funny, unless it's horrendous, and then you just call them out. But anyway, you touched on ADHD, and I want to talk a bit about that today because I feel like it's a really important conversation for us to be having, just so that it's not polarising for people that are kind of learning or understanding what that means. You said just now your recent diagnosis of ADHD. Has it changed anything by having the label ADHD?
Again, how long have we got? Look, this is a big one for me at the moment. Like I got my diagnosis 3-4 years ago. It sort of started at the beginning of COVID, which I think was like actually a point for a lot of people, for a lot of realizations. But I'm now sort of going through it with my kids as well. For me, I'm still working it out, but at the end of the day, to summarize, you know, we can talk about labels as in good or bad, whatever. Having the diagnosis has been so affirming for me and validating about so many things in my life, you know, that are quite triggering and traumatic, or, you know, so many low points in my life and high points where I can go, okay. And I'm not just talking,
I get it now. That makes sense now.
Yeah.
Yes.
Not because I'm here because I want to be like finding excuses, or because I want to be, you know, using it as a dismissal of anything. It's from the perspective of going, okay, like that wasn't just, there wasn't something wrong with me.
No, more like self-discovery and self-like awareness.
And even so much broader than what I think people will be thinking right now in their heads about, you know, what they think symptoms of ADHD is or what it means for someone. Like I'm talking, it's connected to everything. It's connected to my identity, like understanding my body, understanding my hormones, understanding my cycles, because it is actually all the same thing. Like when I say it was
that's the thing.
When I say it was a can of worms, I'm talking it was like a big giant one from Costco that like was opened up, and I'm still working it all out.
Right. But at the same time, I imagine, like anyone, when you actually have some answers or at least a name for something, it would have also been a relief almost.
At first, it was very scary.
Yeah, right. Okay.
It was very daunting. I didn't know what to do with the information. I didn't actually. It's funny because everyone around me when I got the diagnosis was like, could have told you that for free. And like no one was shocked. I wasn't even shocked. I think I always knew.
Right.
But like getting that, and like literally like when I did mine, and you know there's certain steps you have to take, you know, DSM-5, and you've got to do all these tests and whatever, like literally halfway through the lady's like answering for me because she's like, yep, not like it was one of those things where it was like so obvious.
Right.
But then once I got the information and I had that, I was like, what was I like, what did I want from that?
Right.
Because I hadn't worked that out yet.
And also the other side of that is, okay, now we have a label, and then what does that mean? Because for me as a practitioner, my fear is people take on a label and then run with it.
Yeah.
And become something that they actually weren't before. I'm not saying you've done this at all, but I think it's important to talk about, not necessarily just ADHD, but someone has an endometriosis diagnosis or a PCOS.
Anything.
They embody that. They become that label, and I think it's important.
And that's a risk with ADHD because
Right.
like we will make something our personality, and that was one of my biggest fears too.
Right.
And that's why like I find it really hard online, because yes, I want to talk about it, and yes, I want to share the experience, but like I also don't want that to become the only thing that I'm known for.
Right.
Or like you know, it's really hard because sometimes, you know, people are constantly asking me questions or want me to talk more about it, and it's really hard to explain to people that like, yes, this is a part of me, but like I'm navigating it too. And I don't want to mislead anyone, give misinformation. Often when you do get labels for things, whether it be ADHD, endometriosis, when there are other people who are experiencing the same things or going down the same journey, I get terrified because I don't want to become like this sort of like messiah for people, this like pillar of hope. Because even when I got diagnosed, I was like, okay, like what do I do? Like I was like, do I want medication? Is medication going to help? Is medication going to change who I am? Is it going to dull down who I am? And I didn't medicate for nearly a year and a half because I was like,
well, nothing had changed at that point either, really.
There's no magic answer for anything. You know, as a practitioner, you know, you get the diagnosis of endometriosis. There's no magic
I almost don't
answer.
want my patients to have the diagnosis, the ones that are going to take on the label. And so I will say, well, that doesn't change anything really. You are still you.
And, you know, and then becoming defined by it.
Right.
Because that was like a huge terrifying thing for me. And you know, because you are my practitioner and you're working through all the things that I'm working through at the moment, they're all linked.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Because by like scientifically speaking, it is to do with chemical imbalances in my brain, hormones. Like, oh, I have extreme hormones and I also, do you know what I mean? Oh,
Yes.
maybe that's got something to do and affecting the extreme hormones I have that ruin my life every month.
What I think your realization in that moment has actually done for you is maybe take your health in a different direction and a little bit more like diligent and more focused on that. I think that's been a great thing to observe. Have you felt that?
100%. Like when people come to talk to me about ADHD and the first question's always about medication. How did it help? How did it feel? What did it do? Like looking for that magic answer. And what the truth is that what my diagnosis has done for me has given me a completely different perspective on like my entire life. What I invest in, you know, my health, whether that be, you know, working out, looking at my nutrition, understanding like how my body works, how my brain works, that, you know, my stomach is my second brain, how it impacts my hormones, how it impacts my cycle. Like we could go on for days.
I get happy.
But that conversation is often not what people are looking for.
Sure.
When they go, oh, I want to ask you about your ADHD. You know, how did you find, what medication are you on and how did you find, was it a stark difference for you? Well, I'm actually like autistic and ADHD. So being medicated for ADHD just makes me realize how much more autistic I am than I thought.
Right.
It's just like masking one because like taking the pill.
Yeah.
And taking ADHD, I am medicated for ADHD because I do need that. It masks. It doesn't solve.
Amazing. And I think it's an important conversation to have, but I love the fact that also someone comes to you and says, can you talk to me about your medication? You're like, well, let's talk about your diet.
I mean, I don't do that to people because I also know that that's probably not the time and place and I'm not the person.
Right. But I think in the background, that's what you're thinking. You're like, oh, but also there's all these other parts that you're focusing on that you can see really makes a big difference to how your day-to-day life is outside of medication.
100%. And like I go through phases. I go through periods of time where I don't medicate because I am very conscious of the fact that I'm putting effectively, you know, meth into my body. I mean,
maybe not quite. But
not quite. Let's say, like I said, I'm not a medical practitioner. Please don't take any medical advice from me. But I'm conscious that I'm putting that in my body and the impact that it has. But then there are times where like I need it. Like I need it to function. And it's hilarious because as a woman with ADHD, becoming so aware of how cyclical it is for me and, you know, at certain periods of time, like feels like it's working great and I'm fine. Like I don't need any help. And then other periods of time, like I can't function as a human being.
Right.
It's
probably also in line with your other hormones.
Yeah. They're all up shit creek without a paddle.
No, they're not. No, they're not.
I think too the realization that there is never a magic answer to anything as much as we would love there to be.
Well, it's just your way, right?
And people are always going to be because it is a spectrum, people are always going to be at different points. And what works for me today might not work for that person today, as where that might flip and change. And that's why, as much as I would just love to launch into it with people, I'm very conscious of that and not wanting to, you know, because influencers get a really bad rap, don't they? Right. And constantly people are always like, "What the fuck would she know?" Like, I admit I don't.
Right.
And I'm learning every day and I'm trying different things. You know, because we're on that journey together.
Right. But I would also argue that you're an expert in Olivia White. Like that's what you're an expert in.
That's what I'm an expert in.
And I don't think anyone can argue with that. I say that often about my children. Like I'm the closest thing to an expert in them because I have to be with them all the time.
Yes. Absolutely.
Right. And so I think we often look like people that you're saying, you know, you don't want to be the pin-up girl for ADHD. And I know by no means want to create that, but I do think talking about it and shedding light on it from your perspective really helps other people. It also helps people that either aren't on a spectrum. I would argue maybe everyone is, but, you know, aren't diagnosed and really don't know much about ADHD or neurodivergent living with a diagnosis, it helps other people too. So thank you for being vulnerable, even though maybe you're like, I don't want to be this person.
I know, and it's so hard because like I don't want to deny that part of myself. But then I'm also, you know, so conscious online because, you know, you probably, like the first conversation we had about, you know, are people getting kinder or are we getting trolled? Like, I think I'm just so worried about doing the wrong thing and saying the wrong thing.
Which is interesting.
Which is another way of saying I have ADHD.
Which is interesting though, because I don't feel like you've been worried about those sorts of things in the past.
No,
You've kind of been like, this is me and love me for who I am.
I think especially with my diagnosis with the ADHD, that has been a lot harder for me because of all those triggers and traumas I talked about at the start. As a kid, being the weird kid, being the, you know, the one that was constantly labelled. I'm talking by teachers, by other kids, by other people's parents. I was constantly the one people compared their child to. You know, I got put into an accelerated learning program, but then I got kicked out of it because...
Which is common, right?
Oh my God, so common. And the fact that like for so many years, everyone's scratching their heads going, but this kid's like really, really smart and like, you know, knows heaps of stuff about like all of these other things, but then they also can't apply themselves and, you know, constantly like doing silly and stupid things. Like if I could control that or I knew why I did that, I would not do those things. And then of course into my teen years, you know, doing a lot of really dumb stuff and getting involved with the wrong people and effectively self-medicating, which I didn't realize I was doing at the time. Like my poor mother.
But she's still here and she loves you.
Oh, she does. And yeah, you know, I think it's brought up a lot of those traumas and triggers for me of like never being enough, never being accepted, always being an outcast, always being on the outside, always questioning myself. So when you're online...
So that's why this part has really been something you're really aware of.
Yeah.
This part of you.
I think
Whereas
so.
all the other things that you share so openly and you don't even think about.
Flippantly.
Yes.
So flippantly. And it's actually really funny that we're having this conversation because there's like very much at this time a lot going on in my life, like, and with my kids, where I think it's bringing up a lot of those triggers and traumas.
I do want to ask that question for those that are listening because you've also mentioned your kids. What are some of the signs of neurodivergence in children? You just mentioned a few, but I'd love, like, for the person listening, do we know, like, that parents can actually, like, look out for and educators can look out for? Because I feel like it's still very misunderstood. It's just, that person's, you know, either disruptive or, you know, that's what...
There's a lot of stereotypical
Right,
ideas.
and I'd love to just, if we have awareness about what some of these things are...
I mean, I very much believe that, like you said, we know our kids. Like if we're an expert in anything, it's our children. And while we might not be able to fully understand or be aware because, you know, it's very much a new thing where we're coming to have all of this understanding. You know, in girls, it wasn't even diagnosed. It was only, you know, little boys that we thought that it would...
Why is that the case?
You know, because
with so many things.
Yeah, because we have this stereotypical idea that you are the loud, over the top, like disruptive type, and of course with ADHD, you know, you can have, you know, the two types. I have combined type. In girls, like it's more sort of like, I guess that what we always used to label as away with the fairies, and
really.
Yeah, you know, because it's that, you know, talking about like my own kids. So Teddy is ADHD, and you know, it's exactly how I was as a kid, right? Where it's not impacting you. You know, like your teachers are always like, oh, they're really smart, but they just don't apply themselves, or they don't pay attention, or do you know what I mean? And like quite often teachers say to me like, you know, she's doing really well academically, but, you know, she's away with the fairies. Like everyone jokes she's in Teddyland. You know, we joke all the time she's like a tornado because she leaves a trail of destruction behind her because she just does things and it's like then moves on to the next thing. Like she's very much like me. You know, I can talk about it in sense of my own symptoms where if it's not the next thing that I need to do, it does not exist.
Right.
Same as if I've moved on from it, it no longer exists. Like, you very much live in the now, I feel like, is a really good way of explaining it, because I cannot comprehend either way.
Right.
That's too much. But also the big emotions, which people love to label girls as over the top, dramatic, overreactor. And like, that's a really hard one for me, because I remember being younger, like, all these things where people would label you, and I had no idea or concept of rejection sensitivity dysphoria, where like any tiny thing that could even potentially be perceived as negative to the average person, like, but to me, I'm a failure.
Right.
Like, I'm the worst person ever. Like, that they hate me. I'm doing such a terrible job. Like, it's so hard to explain to people that don't experience it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, you have visceral reactions, like justice sensitivity dysphoria. Like, I could never understand why people didn't react to things the way that I reacted. Even something as simple as, a friend might be telling me, I remember when I was younger, and our girlfriend was telling me about like something to do with her job, and it was like they weren't paying her on the weekends, like overtime, like what she was entitled to, because they justified it that they paid her like 20 cents more during the week, and that it labeled it. And I remember getting so angry and having such a visceral reaction and being like, that is unacceptable, like you should quit, or you should do this, or you should take them to Fair Work. And even she was like, whoa, like that's very and I'm like that about so many things. And then almost it gets frustrating, because the person who might just be telling me something and not looking for me to like be their savior or like, get really worked up for them. And here I am just having this like full on visceral reaction to things and being like, why don't you care more? It's happening to you. Like, I feel everybody else's emotions. Like, and I think that's why I struggle too to talk about it with people, because it's very hard to explain to people that don't experience that. Like, because they're like, the fuck
they
is
don't
wrong with you?
understand.
Like, why are you so over the top?
Also, when Teddy was diagnosed, did that bring...
Teddy's actually not formally diagnosed.
Okay,
yeah,
but
so I should... Oh, yeah.
But
we know.
So,
and
so
we've spoken
does that
with
bring
teachers
up
and...
anxieties? Because I think we all have anxieties via our children. So I remember I hated primary school. I just didn't like it for a lot of reasons. But I spent a lot of the time in primary school feeling extremely uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. When that phase came for my Liv, I just all of those feelings, all of those insecurities, all of the like jealousy, all the things were like resurfaced, and I had to live it again.
Yep.
Is that what's happening for you?
Like literally.
That doesn't sound fun.
Literally what I'm in the midst of at the moment. And Teddy's 8, Annabelle's 10. They've both like sort of, been going through things at school, but obviously more so with Ted being that very typical ADHD, and like touching on, saying, oh, she's not formally diagnosed. We have had this conversation with the teachers. It happens every term.
Right.
It's just a case of getting the formal diagnosis, but I just want everybody to know that like you don't need a formal diagnosis. You know your kids, and like we are going through the path at the moment. It's just very lengthy, as anyone who has done it would understand. But never take that as, oh, well, I don't have the formal diagnosis. So like, it's not like it just switches on when you get it.
Well, that's what we were talking about before,
for other
there's
parents,
a label.
I wanted to give them that assurity. Things like, I just recently went away with Ted, and oh my God, it fucking broke my heart. I'm going to cry.
Oh.
2 things happened. One, we were on a work trip. She was the only kid that was there, which is a very unique position to be in, because normally if we're on stuff like that, we're either by ourselves as a family, or it's just me and them, or like it would all have kids, right? So like already she's in a unique position. No one else had kids on the trip, let alone no one actually had kids. Like none of the people had kids. And, bless her little soul, like she just wants to do a really good job. We're in like 150% humidity, and she's wearing an Iron Man costume because like she just wants to, she just wants to do good. And, she's such a big personality. Like she loves to be that kid. Do you know what I mean?
Well, she loves showing up with you on social media,
100%.
unboxing things.
Yeah.
Like, she's there. She's all in.
My other child's like, absolutely not.
Yeah.
It's Ted's thing, right?
Yeah.
And so she'd been in the park the whole day. This was really an itinerary for adults, right? Like, everybody else was knackered. We had a 2-hour break. Everyone went and had a nap. We're still going in the park. Like, she's just on. We're leaving. Her little heel's bleeding. And I said, Ted, I'll piggyback you. But we're trying to get out in the crowd. I've got all these bags. And so I kind of kept having to shrug her up.
Yeah.
And she goes, no, put me down. I'm too heavy. And I'm like, no, darling, it's fine. It's fine. Like, your foot's bleeding. And she goes, no, put me down. I feel bad. I'm fat and lazy.
Oh, what? And she's been around the park the entire day.
And I just like, my heart just like dropped.
Yeah.
Because I was like, first of all, I don't ever use that terminology in our house. Like, we are very like, that word does not get said. If ever it has been said, I'm very much like, correct that.
Right. Yeah.
Because I'm very mindful
right
of
now.
language having young girls.
Yeah.
And I'm like, where has she got this from? And like you, I didn't like primary school. I don't do too well with my kids going to school and being outside of my care for 6 hours a day. That terrifies me. So then to sort of have her repeat language that she's getting from somewhere else and how she's taken that on board as like, oh, I'm fat and lazy. I was trying to I was like crying the whole way home. And there was another time where I get it. It's difficult when you don't have children yourself and there's only one child and everyone's tired. We're on this work trip and you're getting, what was your favorite thing you did today? Like, what was your favorite memory from school? Like, God bless her. She always has to fill a sign and she just wants to talk to adults, right? And at one point, she kind of got asked to like move her seat at dinner. So she was, that person sort of wanted to converse in the conversation, not thinking it wasn't intentional, but it meant that she was at the end of the table. And she's sort of sitting there and she kind of has this look on her face. And I was like, honey, are you okay? And she's like, nobody wants to talk to me. I did a bad job today.
Oh.
And I was like, we're at dinner and I started crying.
Oh, no.
She's crying. I'd like freaking took myself to the bathroom and I'm like, oh my God, it's so we ended up leaving dinner early, right? Because it's like, I also can't, we're on a work trip. Everyone's just trying to have a freaking good time.
Right.
It's hard to explain to people that like, I'm going through a lot with like preteens, like there's a lot going on and I'm on a work trip. So like, I got to hold this together. And so, yeah, it was rough because it was just that, as a mum, and then also, being neurodivergent myself, having ADHD myself, seeing all the things that I have triggers and traumas from as a child in my own child.
Brings up so much for you.
And also the fear of like, I don't know. It's the same conversations that you and I have had about, me trying to work out everything with my hormones, like staring down the barrel of a hysterectomy or a, ablation and making that decision that, no, I'm going to take the fucking slow and hard route
way.
because I'm going through all that with my kids.
Yeah.
And I don't want them to have to go through everything that I went through. Like, knowledge is power, but fuck me, sometimes I just wish that I could know less.
Yeah, right. I mean, we've had this conversation before. It would be easier, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
But would it be? We're not that person.
I know.
Right?
I know.
So we have to embrace who we are.
Would it be to be blissfully unaware?
Yeah.
And that is like one of the, also, being ADHD too, is that like, if you have to know
everything. Right.
And then before you know it, you don't just have a tinfoil hat. You're a nice, shiny, wrapped present under the conspiracy theory tree. And I'm here going, I didn't want to be this person.
I didn't want to know that.
I didn't want to know that. Why can't my problems be solved by pills? Why does it have to be through freaking undoing years of misinformation and actually living healthy, and that's way too hard.
Well, it is. I mean, health is hard, but sickness is harder. So I think that's the thing. It's like we've got to just do the best that we can.
Yeah.
One more question for you. How
Yes.
can parents best support their kids that have a diagnosis, do you feel, in developing meaningful friendships and social skills and and ensuring that they feel comfortable and confident? I know it's not an easy question, but are there some things that you have said to your kids that perhaps you're like, you can see that is going to help them to do that and make those connections?
Avoid neurotypical people. No, I'm joking. I'm joking. No,
Well,
it's funny. It's a funny question because it's still something that I'm working out. You know, I'm 35, and I think that it's funny because, you know, there's never like some. It's not a mountain where you get to the peak, is it? In anything in life, if you think that you're there or you're close, you're a fucking idiot. Am I allowed to swear? Sorry.
Yes, you can swear.
In the perspective of like trying to give other parents maybe something meaningful and tangible, I have found for myself personally that a diagnosis, but also I just want to let people know that, like, if you know, you know, and while that process can be very lengthy, or you may even choose not to because of the methods that you choose to go down, if you know, you know. So don't take a label as whether you can or can't do something. For me, getting my diagnosis, it made me analyze and make decisions that I don't think I ever could have made without, because of the relationships that I had, the things that I tolerated in relationships, the things that I tolerated in myself and my own behaviors and my own boundaries or lack of boundaries, what I accepted from other people. That all changed for me because I was like, oh no, like, that's actually not me. That's your inability or your denial of, you know, accepting who I am, or maybe projecting onto me, or, you know, gaslighting me effectively. And so in turn, what I hope I can do and that I am doing is giving you know, because you can't control what other people do.
No.
That's the first lesson.
But it's
You can't change how someone
Yeah.
thinks, feels, or treats you. What you can do is change how you react and respond to that, whether that be removing that person from your life, whether that be, you know, removing yourself from situations that you find triggering or traumatic. You know, it's not my place to turn around to my kids and go, oh, well, you've just got to become more palatable for people. Like, masking is the worst thing that you can do. I've done it for 35 years, like 30, however many years until I was diagnosed. The moment that I realized that I didn't have to do that and I didn't have to be palatable for everybody, especially people who just want to deny and put back on me. So trying to instill that in my kids, in the confidence in who they are, is enough, that they are enough, they are more than enough, and they will always be enough to the right people. Anyone else, that's not your problem. It is not, you know, yeah, we all got to live in this society, and we can't all just, you know, go on, you know. But as I always tell myself, you know, if someone's doing something, or someone, you know, say reacts or responds to something in a way that I wouldn't, like, why is it my place to say, oh, well, that's wrong?
Right.
You know, like, I've had comments from people before about how, like, they think that one of my children has reacted to something like it's an underreaction or an overreaction. And I'm like,
who gets to decide that?
Who gets to decide that? Like, that's not like your place. And I think I can't stop people projecting onto me or people projecting onto my kids, but I can teach them and hopefully help them to understand that's also, like, not their problem and it's not a reflection of them, which is very, very hard, especially when you have ADHD, because you take everything as a fucking slight against you. And you take, like, I already don't think I'm enough. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't need someone else to make me feel that way.
Well, I think the hard part also is that I think a lot of people feel like that already.
Yeah.
And what is
But at
a
least
human
I'm
and
not
what is
projecting onto other people.
Right.
I'm self-aware of that.
Yes.
And I'm trying to work on me. I don't need all of you failing to work on yourself.
Yeah, right. Well, that's so true. But I think that that's really important. It's really difficult, again, when you have a label for anything and then you go, hang on a minute, what's human, what's me, what's otherwise, what's the label, like, what are all those things? And maybe we just get to be ourselves. But I think the nicest thing for you is that you are being an amazing example for your children, and you are being an amazing example for your community. And regardless of, like I said before, I don't want to put you as the pin-up person, and I'm not trying to do that.
No,
but
I appreciate it because it's nice.
Right, but you are an amazing example for other people to be able to be inspired by, even though you probably don't realise that. You are, and I think that's all we can do with our children, is be the example that we want them to emulate, and they learn by that. You can't tell them what to do.
No.
But you can be the example.
And that's it. And, you know, for me, especially lately, like navigating all this stuff, like my number one priority has been investing in my kids, whether that be immersing them in the things that they love, so that they know, like, don't let anyone else tell you what's cool. Like, if that's what you love, then love that. And you know me, I mean, I've got ADHD. If I'm going to invest in something, we're going to invest in 120%. Right. My daughter's like, I love soccer. I'm like, yeah, we're going to the Olympics. So my daughter's like, I love Taylor Swift. I'm like, we're going to Taylor Swift in Europe. She's like, I love Lego. I'm like, sweet. Like, we're going to Billund. Like, you know, same with Teddy, you know, like I just love to immerse my kids in the things that they love, because, you know, when I was younger, it was like, well, that made you weird. Like, I loved Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and I was like a massive nerd, and I used to like HTML code my own websites, and everyone's like, fuck, she's such a weirdo. And I'm like, no, that's actually really cool. You know, now my daughter's like, you know, invested in writing like her own Vampire Diary fan fiction, and I'm like, that's cool.
Yes.
Like, yeah, I just think, you know, for me, like I said, I can't fucking worry about everybody else, even though I do, and I do take it on board. I try not to. They are my priority. I am my priority. We're just trying to work it out. I don't have all the answers. I know we're not perfect, like, but also, like, if you want to come and like project onto me, or you want to come into my space and like try and fuck shit up, like, I do not have the capacity for it. Right. I'm probably going to yell at you. Like, that, you know, that's just, I'm just warning you.
Well, it's delightful to watch you and your kids, and I've definitely been part of that whole watching all of that, like from when they were little to where they are now. I think that you're absolutely
and
loving.
You're still around, so
I'm still here.
Thank you.
But I think you're absolutely loving the crap out of parenting at this age. I think that shows. Like, it's really nice to see that.
I know that it probably made that sound like all doom and construction. I love it. I love the challenge of it. I love the fact that I am being confronted with so many things. Like, I sit here and go, oh my God, I'm so traumatized and I'm so triggered. I'm not, yes, I am rocking in a corner sometimes, but I'm also like, I don't think I ever would have made the decision to, you know, really find an answer for all of my like hormone issues and everything that I've gone through if it weren't for the fact that I wanted to make a change for my children, for my daughters, that I didn't want them to go through the same thing. I probably would have gone, fuck it, let's get hysterectomy.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like, same with like my mental health and my diagnosis and just everything in life. At some points I'm like, I'm making this so hard, but I'm actually not.
Yeah.
I'm making it easier for the future. And it has meant making massive, not all massive,
but
it's meant
hard,
making
hard decisions.
Hard decisions, but a lot of things that are just not quick fixes. I'm talking like lifestyle changes, complete and utter 180s on things that I probably never would have done because I lived my life just for me for so many years, and I just wanted a quick answer to things so I could go keep living it.
Right. The purpose for living has been amplified.
Yeah.
With your kids. I love that. We're out of time. Thank you so much. I mean, I wanted to ask you about travel and all the things. But anyway.
I told you this would happen.
No, but thank you for being vulnerable and sharing. And I know, again, you are saying like you are just doing you. Yes. And that's all you can do at the end of the day. And I know that will be inspiring to people. And I know that you get to just show up and be you. And that's all you have to do. So that's awesome. Thank you so much for being with me here today.
Thank you for having me.
Loved
Maybe we need a part two.
Maybe we
do. I can waffle on about something else.
No, we need to. Well, also we can talk about all the other amazing things that you share, finance and travel, and like lots of things. People can go and check you out on Instagram and TikTok, and dive into your world there because what you share is awesome.
Maybe not because it was too much. It's your fault for being in my inner sanctum, so I'm too comfortable talking to you.
You did great.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Liv. Hey there, it's Nat Kringoudis, host of the Wellness Collective podcast. I know how important it is to have a safe space for women's health, and that's why we created NK the Membership, an online sanctuary where you can access expert guidance and support right from home. Get early access to monthly masterclasses, unlimited access to our entire catalogue, and practical resources to achieve hormone harmony. Plus, enjoy a 20% discount on supplements and join my monthly live Q&A sessions. Join our community of like-minded women and wellness experts to revolutionise your health one topic at a time. Visit our website and sign up now. It's legit Netflix for hormones.